And welcome to Problem Solvers, the Industry 4 Community Podcast. Our webinar version of the podcast is called Problem Solvers. And today we've got Neil Cresswell, CEO and co-founder of Portainer. Today the goal is to talk about how Portainer solves problems in industry and demonstrate it, right? That at the end of the day, that's what Problem Solvers is all about. So with that, we'll bring in Neil. Neil, welcome. How's it going, dude? Where are you at right now? You're obviously in a hotel. Where are you doing this from?
I'm in Amsterdam, in between conferences. I had a conference in Hamburg, and I've got a conference in a couple of weeks' time back in Amsterdam, and I'm off to Munich this weekend, and got a meeting there next week, and really just bouncing around as seems to be my life these days.
Did you relocate to North America?
Yeah, to Phoenix.
You live in Phoenix. Okay. Because I remember when we first met a few years ago, you were just you just lived on the road. I mean, you just went from city to city.
76 days of the year I was on the road for the last 3 years, but this year Phoenix is now home for the next 5 years, according to my visa. Assuming that I don't do anything silly. But yep.
Good. All right. Awesome. All right. So today, what are we going to, let me just talk about how I talk about Portainer all the time. I use Portainer in basically every infrastructure. In fact, we were at ICC last week, and we were doing Prove It at ICC. And I had this conversation with FreeWave. FreeWave makes 900 megahertz radios, and they came out with this device called the ES1000, which is an edge PC. I should have brought it up here. Basically has like dual cell on it, and it's production ready. They got this product called Zentry, and really what they're selling their cell service where they handle the connectivity. They've got the edge device. They've got Zentry, which is like their software-based VPN, zero trust. Really powerful. That's like the sort of the nuts and bolts of their hardware. GPS, it's got all sorts of sensors and stuff on it. It's really awesome. Well, they come to me and they're like, hey, why don't you, would you like to take a look at this product? Like where would this go to market? And the first thing I asked was, do I have console access to the Linux operating system? Can I install Docker on it? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, so literally the first thing I do every single time I've got like a Linux, console access to Linux OS, the first thing I do is install Portainer, and then I install a development stack. So what I did was I at ICC last week, I did like an impromptu prove it session with this device, and all my integration was managed through Portainer. So Node-RED, I basically did connect, collect, store, analyze, visualize. And I was consuming from the virtual factory, publishing back with a stack of containers that included Litmus Edge and Ignition and Timebase. But Portainer is the brain. It's like the centerpiece. It's what gives me access to the infrastructure. I use Portainer on literally every development environment, just bar none. There's no exception. It's like my first 3 steps are SSH in, install Docker, install Portainer, then go to the Portainer web service, and then start deploying my development environment. So I talk about Portainer all the time, but today the audience is going to get a chance to see specific solutions. So what is it you're gonna go over today in this Problem Solvers?
So where we see Portainer used the most in industry, right, it is a mechanism to deploy applications. As I said when we spoke last time, Portainer itself is basically irrelevant. What is relevant is the software that brings about change in a factory. That is the software that is the Industry 4 stack. But almost all of that software these days ships in containers. And containers are an IT tool, not necessarily an OT technology. And so how do you bridge that gap? And so Portainer is really this enabler for either manufacturers, like equipment manufacturers, like the one you just talked about, to say, look, how can I enable people to run container-based software on this device? Or for the Industry 4 software vendors to say, how can I enable our customers to get our software running in their infrastructure quickly, right? So I'm just going to walk you through the capabilities, because the edge compute capabilities in Portainer are like the best kept secret. For a start, you've got to turn on the feature before you even see them.
Yep.
And if you don't turn them on, you don't even know they're there. But even if you do turn them on, if you don't fully understand how they all work, you don't actually appreciate the absolute power that's there. Like running Portainer on a bunch of devices one by one, yeah, that's cool. It's quite useful. But where it becomes incredibly powerful is its centralized fleet management. So one copy of Portainer managing thousands or hundreds of thousands of devices out in the field. That's where it becomes really powerful.
Have you ever thought about, having a tag so that it's Portainer tag edge? And so if you deploy that instance, then the edge capabilities are already turned on.
Yeah, and so the whole thing is actually,
I know why it's shut off, because so many people who use Portainer don't need the edge capability. Like you have a big broad audience.
That's
really?
not even why it's off. It's actually even more stupid, and we could probably fix it with actually a command line input. It's off because to turn it on, we need to know the FQDN, the actual domain name that the edge system is going to listen on. And so it's when you turn it on, we automatically read the address that's in the address bar and use that for settings. Now, you could just pass it through as an environment variable, but of course, we're trying to make things really easy and dynamic and auto magic. So you turn it on and hey, presto, it works. But moving forward, we are going to have a new version of Portainer that has a get started wizard, and it'll actually ask you, what do you want to do here? I want to manage fleet. Okay. Then it will turn on stuff for you. So we're fixing that completely stupid idea that we had of having behind a switch. By the way, if for every product manager listening, don't do that.
Okay. Here's two interesting things, and then I consult for a lot of OEMs, right? Companies will hire me to basically come in and either they're consulting, they're asking me to do technical consulting, like their product, and give them some guidance, or go to market, like they're doing two questions, right? I cannot tell you that the number, like if it's a hardware vendor, I am almost always saying you should ship Portainer on board. If they offer, especially if it's an edge device, I'm like, listen, when someone provisions this device, they should be able to go to host :9443 and open up Portainer and be able to deploy containers, right? And if they're a software vendor, I cannot tell you the number of times I'm like, listen, you guys need to be a template inside of Portainer. When people download Portainer, your software should be available in the template library in Portainer, right? And I find myself saying that all the time, like our partnership, like us doing this, we've been working with Portainer for years because Portainer's awesome. Like it's just, I use it everywhere. And it's like, it's just this synergistic thing. It's perfect, right? It's amazing to me. If there is a piece of software I talk about the most, it is Portainer, no matter who, all across what I do, But I want to ask you this question. So I always try to explain to people what Portainer is. And obviously it's complicated because for someone who doesn't know Portainer at all, the best way to describe it is it's a Docker GUI, which is, it is a Docker GUI, but that's like one little tiny thing of what Portainer's capabilities are. In fact, its power is in these edge capabilities. Really, its real power is in edge and managing horizontal scale in a business, right? But here's the interesting thing. Someone had said to me, they in a YouTube comment, they're like, well, why don't you just use Docker Desktop? They're like, there is a GUI and it's Docker Desktop. And I'm like, Docker Desktop sucks. Like I can't do any of the stuff I can do in Portainer with Docker Desktop. So, which brings me to this question. Why is it, I know I asked this in the podcast, but I want to ask it again. How did you guys, what is it, the problem you were trying to solve when you built Portainer? And how is it that you built it in a way where it is just perfect for what we do? Well, for the other GUIs that are out there, they are not perfect for what we do. They don't have any of the features that we need. They're not what it is. What was the problem you were ultimately trying to solve? And why is it Portainer did a better job of it than anyone else? Before we get into the problem solvers part.
So there are two ways to build a product, right? And it's either short-term gain or long-term play, right? And I have since day one seen containers as the absolute technology that will become as ubiquitous as virtualization is, right?
Yep,
That'll be
absolutely.
containers. Now, I knew that was going to take a few years to manifest. It'll take many years to manifest. Virtualization took 10 years until it sort of started really taking off, and containers will follow the same thing, right? But if you build a product and think, okay, I need to sit by and not make money for 10 years, that doesn't really gel well, right? So most of the people who entered the container management market in around the same time we did, focused on the audience that were ready to consume it at that exact point in time, who are the DevOps aficionados, the specialists, the absolute technology ninjas, right? Who really, really wanted bells and whistles and switches and levers. And I said to that, no way, that's not our audience. Our audience is the mainstream. It's the IT generalist. It's the engineer, cross-functional skilled engineer who needs to do 150 things in a day.
Right.
They can't master all of them. So how can we, as a piece of software, allow them to do extraordinary things without being a specialist? And I've held that belief since day one. And as the market has finally picked up to the mainstream, we've had 9 years of perfecting our core ethos of make this stuff easy. 9 years of perfecting that. So now the market is absorbing us like, this is perfect. That's it, plain and simple.
You want to hear something funny? So last week at ICC, Inductive Automation, during the technical keynote, they basically shined a flashlight on all of the architectural changes that came out in version 8.3. So Ignition, you can already deploy with Portainer. You can go into the template library and you can deploy Ignition. And you can deploy either a full-blown Edge or Maker Edition from right inside Portainer, right? And now you have a bunch of different ways you could deploy that template. You could create your own stack and turn that into your own template, which is what I do. I have Ignition as one part of a much larger composable stack that is managed inside of Portainer. But one of the very first things I thought listening to Carl talk about the future of Ignition, then they did a demo showing composable projects and composable architectures with Ignition, deploying the databases and everything and managing them at scale composably. The first thing I thought was, the future, most people in this room don't know this, but the future is Portainer is going to be the layer with it. Portainer is going to be the layer directly above Ignition and all the tools you're using to build IoT infrastructure. Like Portainer, I'm not going to use the DevOps tools for me. Me personally, I'm not going to use the DevOps tools that they were showing, right? I'm not going to use GitOps. I'm not, that's not, I'm not an IT professional. I don't want to learn all those tools, but the same changes you made in 8.3 that make that type of DevOps approach supportable are the same changes that make that type of approach supportable in Portainer. And that's going to apply to such a broader swath of the market. And the first thing I thought was, most people in this room don't know, but you're not going to be working in the Ignition gateway nearly as much as you're going to be working in Portainer in the future. That was the first thing I thought, was like, You're going to be doing so much of the composable elements of your infrastructure plus your projects you're going to be managing in Portainer, because the building blocks of it now are in the back end of the way Ignition is built. And Ignition is going the route of configuration files instead of ORMs, embedded ORMs for the master data inside the applications, which are primarily the limitations of being able to compose architecture. So, all right, with that.
Well, for me, right. So we aren't, nor will we ever be, a vendor of software that pulls data from machines, or right. We're not an MQTT broker. We're not a protocol, like transport. We do one thing, and one thing exceptionally well: get other people's software running on devices that can run Docker or Kubernetes. Right, that's all we do. And so all of our R&D, everything is focused on that one sole task. If you're a software vendor who ships as containers, and you want to try and build what we've built with Portainer, why? Just partner with us. and then focus on making your amazing software, connecting to machines and pulling data and doing whatever you're doing better. Don't worry about the actual the mechanics of getting software out there. We just do that for you, and we've got years of practice doing it.
And you do it the best. You do it the best in the market, and it's not even close. It just is not even close.
The scale that we've got now is phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, so much of what I do, I wouldn't be able to do. I would not be able to do at scale or with the speed that I can do it without Portainer. Like if you look at my lab instance of Portainer, the one that's running in the lab here, all the cool things that you get, virtual factory and all those things you guys get to see. Portainer is the hub. It's how I manage everything. I wouldn't be able to keep track of every node. I wouldn't be able to keep track of every container running on every node. You know how many applications I have running in this lab alone? I think it's like 140. There's no way. And all of that is managed through Portainer. So however many, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 7 host nodes. I have 7 nodes just in this lab alone. And on that, it's 140 something applications total. All of that's managed in Portainer, like from networking to persistent storage, to the relationship between each of those applications, all the connections, all of that is managed inside Portainer. There's no way I could keep track of that in my brain if I was literally installing each of those applications in each individual host. Like it's just, there's no way I could manage it. And I'm able to do it fast and at scale only because of Portainer. I mean, it's really crazy.
And also, let's say one of those apps fails, right? And you need to go troubleshoot it. How is your Docker knowledge at the command line? Do you know all the commands?
No. In fact, without I say this all the time. People in my space, people in my world, we cannot memorize. We do not have the time to memorize all the command. Right. It's like I have an agent who will help me if I got to jump into the command line. But what I'm doing is going into Portainer. I'm looking at the logs in Portainer, and then I'm getting console access directly from Portainer into the container to do any of my manipulation. It's like I'm never going into Docker command line.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. It's like trying to remember all these commands. You know, it adds no value to your business. So don't bother. Portainer makes it really easy to visualize what's there. You can see all of the actual troubleshooting capabilities available to you. Click, look at this. I've now solved the problem. You know, when something goes wrong, what matters is how fast can you get it operational, not how many commands have you memorized. It's as simple as that.
So what will you demo today? What's the use case that we're gonna?
I am going to just walk through how you would actually onboard a factory of devices. So I've got a Portainer instance stood up in the cloud. I have already onboarded a single device, so we can at least start from one device. I've got 9 other devices sitting in a waiting room, and I'll talk through all this stuff. We'll onboard them, we'll group them, and then we'll deploy an app to them. And you can sort of see the kind of workflow that you'd use, either using a template, how easy it is to simply go and deploy and then update things. So we'll just run through that process.
Perfect.
So we'll just share my screen and we'll see how we go. This is where I hope the hotel Wi-Fi doesn't pop.
Let's hope the hotel Wi-Fi in Amsterdam is really good.
It is fiber, but you never know. So here I have a Portainer instance, right? I've got a very, very small virtual machine, 2 CPUs, 2 gig of RAM that's running the Portainer instance.
Vaughn, go full screen on the screen share, please. Awesome. Thank you.
I have a single edge node, and this happens to be a Docker piece of equipment out there somewhere, 2 CPUs and 4 gig of RAM. It's just a Docker machine. I have the waiting room configured, and I'll talk through this in a second. And in that waiting room, I've got these other devices that are basically devices out there in the field that are running Docker and have had the Portainer agent using our auto onboarding script, which again I'll talk about in a second, run on them. And so they're now beaconing back to Portainer saying, "Hi, I'm a new device. Do you want to manage me?" And that's it. They're just sitting here pending, and I'm now ready to take over these machines, accept them for management, and then start to use them from the central management instance.
And one of the things I love about Portainer, by the way, is that even if you don't use the auto onboarding script, you can still add a node that you've installed Portainer on just by coming through the local, the environment related, the onboarding. You can onboard directly from here as opposed to having to use that auto onboarding script. Like one of the things I love, a key indicator of great software is that there's many ways to do the same thing.
Yeah, the add environment wizard here is basically letting you connect to a device that's already out there, and you just want to do like ones or twos. The auto onboarding feature is a way to take a generic installation instruction and then run that on hundreds or thousands of devices, and the devices receive their personality once they're accepted by Portainer. So when they run up, they have no personality. They're simply a vanilla machine beaconing back to the Portainer server at this address. In this case, it's an IP address, but whatever. It can be an FQDN as well. It'll beacon back to the Portainer instance to say, hey, I'm a device, accept me for management. And when it's accepted, it's given an identity. It's then managed and manageable by Portainer. So this is a great way to, Docker standalone. You simply run this command, and this is embedded in or encoded in this edge key is actually the address for the Portainer server. So the agent knows where to poll back to. But once you do that, it's there ready to go. Now, again, every single manufacturer should install Docker in their hardware. If you are selling edge gateway hardware and you don't have Docker on it, you need to ask yourself some pretty hard questions. The days of firmware-based applications are well and truly over. So, and then really there should be a very quick and easy way to click using the hardware vendor's UI to say deploy the Portainer agent. You paste in this edge key that you can have in Portainer, and then it will beacon back to an instance. That would be an ideal user experience, but in the meantime, no. So we've run this onboarding. Devices have been announced, and they're sitting in the waiting room. Actually, before I do that, settings, edge compute, turn on edge compute. That's how you get this sidebar. So if you have a Portainer instance and you're not seeing edge compute in the sidebar, settings, edge compute, turn it on. Make sure that this IP address or this FQDN matches what the machines will talk back to, because with the edge compute, the machines talk to Portainer. So this needs to be an address or a domain name that the machines can resolve and talk to, and then everything works beautifully from there. So we've got the machines in the waiting room. As you can see here, we've got one node here that is, I can already click on this one. It'll establish a reverse connection from the Portainer server to the device. And I can manage this device as if I was sitting in front of it. But that's not here nor there. So if I go to the waiting room here, I can click on the devices and I can associate them, which means accept them for management. Or I can associate and assign. So I can say, look, I actually want to add these. I want to add a tag, group 1 or group 2, whatever I want to do. So if I want to do a couple of actions in one go, I can do so, or I can just manually associate them and then assign groups later on, groups or tags.
And I would say the group functionality, as simple as it is one of the most powerful management functions that people don't use enough of. Because I see enormous Portainer implementations, 50, 75, 100 devices, which isn't massive, but it's big for the average person to manage. And they don't have any of them assigned to a group, so they don't know how to get to them quickly.
Yeah, so I won't actually accept the things from the waiting room yet. I'll go talk about groups, right? So edge groups are a way for you to target application deployments, right? So think of an edge group as simply a folder that will contain a bunch of devices that you can then deploy applications onto. This could either be a production line, a particular type of machinery, an entire plant, whatever you want it to be. It is basically a dynamic environment that machines are added to the group based on tags that are passed across to the remote device being managed. So you would create a group. For example, they'll have a group called group 1. I can add a new group. It's going to be called group 2. It's a dynamic, and I want to look for any machine that has the tag group 2 will be automatically added into this group. And as you can see, there's none at the moment. You can actually do partial or full match. So you can say that you can either have any of these tags to be put in the group. So you could say group 1 or group 2. So you can have either of these tags to be in the group, or full match means you must have both of them to be in there, right? So we want to call this one group 2. There's none in there. And so I've created a group. You can see there's no environments in group 0, but on group 2.
So like I don't mean to cut you off, but like in application, I use groups for, I have a group called assets and I have a group called HiveMQ Edge. And so I can select, I have a group where I have assets and HiveMQ Edge where I can deploy to all my assets that are running HiveMQ Edge. I can make updates to all of them at the same time. That's a good a good use case where you're grouping HiveMQ Edge by assets. This is what you're using groups for, groups and tags for.
I mean, the groups are completely up to you. Call them what you want. Use them right. For whatever you want. You can have a group that's just HiveMQ. You can have a group that's Litmus. You can have any kind of grouping you want. It can be physical based, location based, application based. It's up to you, right? It's simply a way to take a bunch of remote devices and put them in a logical structure that you can then target application deployments at.
Hey, Vaughn, will you put Nishad's question up here? How does Portainer handle role-based access control? And let Neil answer that. So how does Portainer handle role-based access control and secrets management across multiple Kubernetes clusters or hybrid Docker plus Kubernetes environments? And can these policies be enforced centrally for enterprise governance?
Okay. So Portainer has authentication built in. So users log into Portainer and Portainer authenticates them. You would normally tie Portainer into your corporate directories. So, your OAuth, and have your Microsoft directory or whatever corporate directory you have. Users are then authenticated by Portainer. And by default, once they're authenticated, they still have access to no environments. You then come in and you can either grant users access on an environment by environment basis, or you can grant them access to environments based on a group. So you can say, I actually want to group them and I want to give access to all of the environments in this group. As part of granting access, you actually give them a role. So you can say, for this user, I want to give them a particular role, and this role determines what they can and therefore cannot do in that environment and any groups in there. So this RBAC is commonized or common across both Docker and Kubernetes. So these roles still apply regardless. So environment administrator, full control of remote clusters. Operator, you can engage and manage what's running, but you can't create new, you can't delete. Help desk, look but don't touch, read only. Standard user and read-only user is you can deploy and manage applications between you and your team. So this is done for both Docker and Kubernetes. Interestingly, Kubernetes, we are coordinating roles and role bindings in Kubernetes. So we create a service account in the cluster and we create a role and role binding in Kubernetes. In Docker, there is no such thing as security at all. You either have access or you don't. So the RBAC for Docker is managed 100% inside the Portainer layer. So never, ever give your users access to the Docker host directly, because then they've got full control. So hopefully that makes sense.
Nailed it.
On the edge features, by the way, there is actually a different role. And there is actually a role called the edge administrator. And you have to be given that role to have access to the edge compute features. So if you don't have that role, you won't see the edge sidebar and have any of the edge actions available to you at all. So
perfect.
Go back to the groups. We have tags, group 1, group 2. We have 2 groups, and we've got these waiting room, right? So we've already onboarded edge node 1. So let's do edge node 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we'll associate and assign. And what we'll do is we'll say they're going to be tagged with group 1. And then we will associate. They're now accepted for management by Portainer. If I come back to the home page, there's the edge, there's nodes 2, 3, 4, and 5. If I go to Edge groups, there's now 5 environments in that group. I didn't do anything. And so those are now in group 1. Now, interestingly, if I had already associated an application, which is Edge Stacks, to the group, and I had onboarded new devices into the group, those new devices will automatically get the application deployed to them. So you don't have to do anything.
My absolute favorite feature in Portainer, right there.
And I will do that with the Edge group too. So let's just start with group 1, right? So we've got group 1 there. We've got these 5 devices in there, and we're good to go. So we can say, look, okay, we've got a template, and we can just choose one to install. So if we want, we could say, MQX Broker if we feel like it, or anything we want really. You name it. I'm trying to think what is actually the lightest one, the lightest one to deploy. Maybe the Ignition Gateway. Oh, there's too many things to fill in. But you can see as I'm clicking around, by the way,
Node-RED's pretty light. Node-RED's pretty light. I use it for all my demos.
All right, so we will do America, New York, because that's in front of me, and I don't want to mess it up. As a time zone, oh, that's what I type right. So basically, this is the time zone that these guys are going to operate in, and I want to deploy that to group 1 and Node-RED. And so this will now go and deploy Node-RED on all the devices in group 1, and I can go and deploy the stack. Now, if you needed to, for example, after, so you can actually say with regards to updates. So once it's deployed for the first time, when there is a new version rollout, you can actually say, how do you want to update them parallel? So you can say, look, I want to roll them out. This is so you don't end up with the kind of CrowdStrike problem where they took down the world. So, update one device at a time, wait 5 minutes between updates, but keep going. Or you can say exponential, start with 1, increment by 2 for each rollout, and go. So bang, 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 it rolls out. Really useful if you have large scale, so that you don't take down your entire environment with a bad update. That we can go and deploy the stack, and so this will now go and tell the 5 devices, hey, there's something for you to do. The 5 devices will check in and actually acknowledge the fact that there is something for them to do. So you go, all 5 devices have actually spoken to the Portainer server. They've acknowledged, hey, there's something for me to do. They're now going off and executing that. And you can see one of them or 2 of them have already deployed and started running Node-RED, and they'll keep going. Hopefully they don't fail. There we go. So 5 of them are now up and running. Right, so Node-RED is now running on those devices, and I can just choose one at random. We'll just choose Node 1 because it's already there. Why not? And that will actually have the Node-RED container running. It's still starting, but there's Node-RED running, and I can click on the logs, and I can see what it's actually doing. So here's Node-RED coming up, right? So that allowed me to deploy Node-RED on all 5 of these devices with just a relatively simple click deploy, and I'm done. I can go and update that. I can do what I want to it. I can come in here and see what's happening to the environment. So you can see, okay, all of them did get it. What version are they running? If you're running version updates, that was pretty simple. I will do the same thing with group 2. So let's say group 2, right? So I go back to the waiting room, and I'm going to onboard 6, 7, and 8. And I'm going to associate that to group 2, and I'm going to associate it. Okay, so we've got 2 left, and we've now should have devices in group 2, and I can do exactly the same thing. So I can basically say, look, Node-RED again, and this time group 2, and I'll do the same thing, even though I'm not in New York, but it doesn't actually matter. I can do the same thing. I can deploy it. What have we done?
Change your name.
Yeah, Node-RED group 2. So that's going to do the same thing, but now there's 3 of them, right? And so let's say I've been running for a week or a month or a year, and I've now onboarded some new equipment. It's pretty simple. I can basically
this is my favorite feature.
the waiting room here. So you just onboarded these 2, and I can say, look, I actually want to onboard these guys as well now, and I'm going to give these guys into group 2. associate. Now the edge stacks, you see now the bars just clicked, and now there's actually more of them now going to deploy. And if I go to groups, there's now five devices. It's automatic, and in a few minutes I can go right to the very last device. Let me just increase the number of devices on the page. I can go to the very last device, and I will be able to actually manage it and know Red will be running on it. So it's pretty cool in that regards, being able to actually just dynamically post for any time in the future, add devices, and they'll automatically deploy and come live. Just quickly through some of the other things here. This Edge Jobs feature is also really quite useful. This lets you run instructions on the remote device outside of Docker. So you can actually say, look, I actually want to run an apt get update, apt get upgrade. You could wget some files. You could run some firmware update command. What we're doing here is actually writing an instruction to the remote device's cron file, using the power of Docker, how we can talk to the physical host. So we're writing to the host cron file this bash script fundamentally, which is what we're doing here. And then the host will run these instructions outside of Docker, and then Portainer will pull the instructions back again. Because it's outside of Docker, you've got significantly more control of the physical host, which means you can do things like firmware updates. You could, in fact, also do system ctl restart Docker if you wanted to. Now, why would you do that? Who knows? But you can kind of run any kind of instructions you like, and this is used by some hardware vendors, Wago I know of, to actually initiate firmware upgrades of their devices. So really quite a powerful capability. And you can kind of use this to do anything you want. It runs anything that you can run in Bash on the host.
I use it to publish. I use in lieu of running a Python application that will publish status. So, I used to write a Python app that would basically publish status to, to a broker for each device. I use this Edge job to do that now. So it instantiates. So we deploy the Python script, but we don't do any of the scheduling. So what I can do is I can control the rate at which I want it to run directly from Portainer, as opposed to dealing with it with the cron scheduling on each individual host. I'm able to do it, schedule an Edge job for one time for all of my devices, but I can manipulate the frequency and the command centrally. So it makes it a lot of like my host status information, where I'm publishing that into a unified namespace. I do it through Edge jobs now, and it's drastically reduced my workload. And the same thing with Edge stacks. We had a client. Intellic has the client, but they basically do mobile water, wastewater. And hey, Vaughn, bring my camera up. Bring our cameras up while I tell this story. So they do mobile wastewater, and we had to install an Edge device, an Advantech Uno that's basically running Ignition Edge, and it connects to the Siemens PLC, and then it publishes via MQTT into an MQTT broker. The way we were having to manage all those devices initially was we were essentially copying an image and restoring the image on each of the devices. So when Advantech would send us a new Edge device, we were literally re-imaging it with an image. Then we were shipping it. We were changing the host name and shipping the device to the client. This started in 2018 or whatever. And one of the things that fundamentally changed is Portainer now does all the administration. So the Advantech Uno is just shipped as a Edge device, and then it's added as it shows up in the waiting room. As soon as it goes online, it shows up in the waiting room, and then we do all the provisioning and management centrally through Portainer, or Intellic does now. And it's reduced the workload drastically.
It's actually, there's some really interesting use cases for this thing. Like I've seen other customers use this to do cert rotation on the device. So where the device has some kind of TLS certs, whatever else, they can use this to kick off a script to basically do cert rotation. I've seen this as a way to get secrets, like back to that previous question, how do we handle secrets? Well, with Docker, there's not really any such thing. So yeah, most people, if they need to have sensitive information, will try and do something on the host by using environment variables. So they can run a script on the host to download or curl a file or do something else from a central location and then populate environment variables. You can kind of do anything on that host. You really are not limited.
What's funny is the cert rotation never even occurred to me until you just said it. It never even occurred to me until you just said it. And so, I'm like, wait a minute, why the hell have I not been doing that?
Well, one of our larger customers actually uses Amazon for their container registry, and they've got device auth turned on, and so they actually have to have a cert on the device for the device to be able to Docker pull from the Amazon registry, and so that has to rotate on a regular basis. So they use Edge jobs to manage that, and basically every day it runs a script which basically rotates the credentials, so the device can always authenticate with their Amazon registry upstream. That way, they've got very, very secure comms between the device out in the field and their trusted published Amazon registry. So
this question here, Neil.
Mm-hmm.
Edge jobs, they can act as an Ansible playbook.
It's a Bash script, so anything you can do in Bash, you can do with Edge jobs.
So the answer is sort of. I mean, there's a lot in a playbook that's different than, but the answer is yes, sort of.
It isn't Ansible. It's simply Bash. So you can actually call a script that's running on the machine. Oh, that's on the machine, physically present on the machine. You can call a script from the Edge job, but it's just Bash.
All right. So what else are we going to see?
So Edge configurations is another thing I just wanted to quickly talk about. I'm just keeping an eye on the
screen
time.
on.
So
show Neil's desktop. Are you still sharing, Neil?
I am. I'll stop sharing and I'll share again just in case. Now?
There you go.
Okay, cool. The joys of it. So if you think about a common use case, right? So let's say with an application here, one of these applications, you want to deploy something that's common. So you want to deploy a common application to hundreds of devices. The problem is each device has to be slightly different. How would you do that? How would you take an application and say, deploy this common applications, common Docker Compose file or whatever else, 100 times, 1,000 times, but each device has to have a slight differential change. Either it has to represent a device ID, some unique configuration that represents this is plant 1, machine 4, whatever else. Edge configurations lets you do that. So you can actually create a zip file, and inside that zip file, you can either have a bunch of files or a bunch of folders, and the files or folders have to be named the same names that you use for all of your devices here. So Edge Node 1, Edge Node 2, Edge Node 3. And inside there, you can have some config files. And you can say, I want to take this and push this file to group 1. And I want to put the file in etc configs. And you can say it's device specific configuration. There's a file name in the folder that matches the name, or there's a folder in the zip file with the name, and then we will automatically extract the file, look for the corresponding match rule, and copy any files into this directory. You can then mount that directory into any application to read a config file, and hey presto, you've now got a unique point of difference between the device and a generic or common application. This is incredibly powerful at scale, where you want to have a generic install, but unique deployments that actually run. Did I make that make sense?
Can you give an example of the use case? like an example, something that would.
Yeah, an example would be a piece of software that's going to do MQTT to OPCUA translations, or maybe there's a Modbus translation layer, and it needs to have some unique identifier for the remote device for the machine. Now, so the software is the same. So in this case, we could say maybe we go to down here, one of the softing connections. So we could say, look, the software is exactly the same. It's the same connector, but each one needs to have a unique machine identifier. So when the data is translated and sent upstream, then it actually has the unique machine identifier attached to it. That's the kind of use case where you'd use Perfect. It. So that is an incredibly useful way to say how do I deploy and configure an application 1,000 unique ways without having to have 1,000 unique deployments, because without it, that's how you do it. You'd have to have 1,000 unique deployments. Not really feasible. And that, by the way, these make up the kind of core capabilities. The edge stacks, I clicky around it a little bit, but you can actually say it comes from Git. So I know that GitOps is a DevOps paradigm, but there are some DevOps paradigms that are actually quite useful in the OT world as well. And GitOps is a little scary because it's like a developer is going to push a new version of the software to Git, and then 1, 2, 3 is now running live in my factory. That might be a completely ridiculous concept, but there might be other use cases where that makes sense. And so you can actually do the exact same thing with edge stacks. You can say grab this from this compose file or from this template, deploy, but actually reconcile. And if we see a change in Git, reconcile and automatically update what's running out there in the field with whatever new version has been detected from Git. So this is a way to get you fully automated rollouts to your remote devices that is triggered from a change in Git. So it's a GitOps paradigm used in the OT world. Use it or not, it's up to your internal change control policies. You can actually, in Portainer, you can actually come to like your edge nodes, and if you want to, you can actually need to go into one of these. You can actually configure a change window. So you can say, look, actually, for this particular edge environment, I actually want a change window, and I don't want you to do. I only want you to do changes between this time and this time, and then it'll actually ignore any automated updates outside of that time anyway. So you can kind of get a hybrid of old world and new world should you want it.
Dustin Symes. Vaughn, go ahead and throw that up. I have clients that are going to have hundreds of Ignition gateways or other edge devices and apps. Management of it all is absolutely crazy. Yeah, there's no question, Dustin, that for me, what Portainer, like functionally what Portainer did for me as a developer and as an architect, was it gave me centralized management to be able to do two things. A, to do my CI/CD, my continuous improvement, because continuous development and integration on my Ignition infrastructure, not just Ignition infrastructure, my Ming stack infrastructure. That's number one. And number two, and the bigger one, was it gave me the ability for me to manage it longer. So I could keep track of everything and manage things much longer using Portainer before I had to dedicate someone to managing that infrastructure, right? I was able to manage multiple sets of infrastructure and keep track of everything and manage it at a scale much higher than I used to be able to manage before I had to dedicate someone full-time to managing it. That's the big thing.
Yeah, I mean, one of our larger customers using our edge capability, they're running about 120,000 devices. There's actually a podcast coming out very soon where I'm speaking to them.
Good.
And so you'll hear that very soon. But that's Cummins, by the way. They've got about 120,000 devices managed by Portainer and growing every single month. And so that is a staggering number to try and even contemplate managing without a tool like this centrally. And so you can actually you can create, groups and distribute your applications at enormous scale.
Groups, tags, and jobs become so incredibly powerful at that scale. I mean, because it's impossible to manage that many devices manually. You need an army. A one person could realistically manage 100 devices manually. Once you get over 100, I mean, and even 100 is hard for one person. And, you need an army of people to manage that without a tool. And the thing that I love about Portainer, and it's not that there aren't command line tools out there. The issue is that Portainer gives you the pane of glass, through the single pane of glass through which to manage. So you don't have to, this is the biggest thing about so many DevOps tools. You have to, in command line, you got to memorize those commands. There's nothing for you to look at to navigate through. It's there's no way to overstate the power of Portainer. And here's the other one. There's no way to overstate just how small a percentage of the capabilities most of you are actually leveraging in Portainer. That's another one. When I see how people are using Portainer, most of the time, it's one device, many containers. And that is barely the tip of the iceberg of its capabilities.
I mean, like, I don't know whether people could see my screen before then, but like for example, how as easy as I added devices from the waiting room and tagged them, like I just untagged node 4, but if I go to node 4 example and say, look, you're no longer a member of group 1, and update it, right, and confirm, and then I go to node 4, by the time I've clicked to it, it's probably already happened. And no, it hasn't yet. I was lucky I was fast enough. But basically, node red will basically be removed. There you go, it's gone now. So node red is automatically removed. So as a device is removed from the group, Portainer also cleans up. So you don't have to do anything. You never actually have to touch the device. You can simply change tags and hey, presto, the device is added to a group. Oh my God, I need to run the application. Okay, now I'm being removed from the group. Okay, I need to remove it. So the entire thing is actually managed centrally from Portainer. You never need to actually touch the devices.
Trent Christopher's question, Vaughn. Forgive me if I missed it already. What are your thoughts on the Portainer MCP server?
We don't have an official MCP server. We have one in development, and we're playing around with it. I quite like it. I quite like the idea of MCP server interfacing with Portainer. There's still a lot of capability, I think, in AI that I think is a little scary in regards to just how much power and control are you giving it. One of my product managers came from Amazon and was responsible for one of their really rocking AI tools, and he's told me just how easy it is to AI is designed to simply follow instructions, and you can actually embed malicious instructions, and as it's talking to devices, it'll read those instructions and then say, okay, I have to follow them, and then follow them. And you can actually have malicious code hidden, and you can say, no, ignore this, it's actually fine, it looks bad but it's fine, and it'll say, okay, fine. So the MCP server is an awesome thing. How people use it is up to them to do so safely.
So it's funny, Trent, you asked that question, because as soon as we're done here, I head over to the office to shoot 3 videos. And one of those videos I'm shooting is, I'm tired of MCP too. I'm tired of MCP also, ... but ... And part of what I'm going to talk about is, I hate to bring it back to inductive automation, but inductive automation at ICC last week, they announced their new MCP module that's going to come out like in January, right? And part of what I talked to them about, and I think this is very important for vendors, vendors must support MCP. Like you're going to need MCP. You're going to need to be able to take Claude Desktop or some other agent and hook it into your software. Even in this case, the MCP server should probably be a container that runs alongside Portainer. And, that's kind of how they basically get deployed together, but it's optional. You should be able to enable the MCP server so that it gets deployed. And also internally, you should be able to configure the MCP server. So an administrator should be able to say, these are the tools I want agents to have access to. So there should be an entire list of tools that are the tools that are available for an agent to interact with in Portainer, but an administrator should be able to select the tools that are enabled for the agent to hook to. Like, that's where we're going to. Like, decoupling the agent. The idea that you're just going to put an MCP server in a piece of software and everything's going to be on. Every tool is going to be on, and you're going to hook the agent into it. And the person using the software is not going to have control over the tools the agent can connect to. I think that's going to hurt adoption. So my part of what I'm going to talk about in that video is that piece at the very end. But I'm really going to talk about how MCP is really being used in industry right now and how it's going to be used. And, now that I've talked enough vendors, to Neil's point, you don't want to just develop an MCP server that suddenly gives, an AI agent complete control over the software and that it can do whatever it wants to based on your instruction. You can't do that. There has to be, we have to be administrating what it can control. So
I just want to give the listeners to this stream here a little sneak peek. So can I share my screen again, or can you bring my screen share up? So this I mentioned this in the podcast last time, and so here it is real. This is being released officially, or announced officially, in Nuremberg at the SPS event next month, right? But this is the Industrial Edge portal. This is the portal that's been designed and built specifically for industry, and it is a front end for Portainer, basically, that speaks the language of industry, right? There's not a container in here. There's not a Docker in here. This is simply your equipment hierarchy. So however you want to define your hierarchy, and then you have, and you can see by as you're clicking here, it's switching here. So there's actually 16 critical issues that you've got at the corp level. And so you can filter through them, and you can say, actually, then I want to look at the devices. So here's the devices at this level. So you can kind of see the devices that are there. You can see the applications that are installed and running. You can actually click to upgrade the application if you want here. And this is basically giving you this kind of really simple way to install apps. And you can come back and say, look, here's my app catalog, and I want to install Grafana. I want to install it on the hierarchy. Next, I want to install it on the Chicago plant, on all the devices in the Chicago plant. Next, I want to do them simultaneous or sequential. I'm going to do simultaneous next. Okay, do I need to override them? Do I need to add any configuration files? No. Next. Okay, deploy. And so this thing is basically that. So behind the scenes, this is talking to Portainer and using those exact things I showed you. It's using edge stacks and edge configs and everything else. It's doing all that cool stuff to actually go and deploy things. And this is designed specifically for OT engineers who have to deploy container-based applications, but couldn't care less the fact that they are container-based. Because in all honesty, why would you? So this is what's coming out.
This is a layer above. This is a layer above Portainer, and but it's correct. Separate from Portainer. It's a separate product.
If I click administration, you can add Portainer instances, and so this will basically allow you to go add a Portainer instance, and then you are basically it'll bring any inventory from Portainer. So all the devices. There's no way to add a device here. You're basically this reads in all the devices that Portainer knows about and lets you group them. So this is an upper layer abstraction across one or more Portainer instances. At least you centrally manage them. And again, there isn't the word container anywhere in here. There's not the word Docker. It's simply talking about devices and device hierarchy and applications, and then you can do what you want with them. So
what form will this take? So I'll install this as a container.
This is a container. It's a container that you like everything with Portainer, that it's all self-hosted. So you will run up a copy of this, and you'll connect it through to.
And then licensing is going to be what you can connect. You can manage one device with this, or 3 devices, and then, or is it this is a premium product from Go?
It it's a premium product from Go, but we definitely want to seed its usage. So expect there to be some incredibly creative ways for us to
land and
get this out
expand.
there.
So you'll still take the land and expand approach, but
absolutely.
it's a premium product.
Correct.
Correct.
And again, it's built by OT guys for OT guys. So it's not built. There's no
that's I mean, it's obviously, it looks way better than I thought it would look. I mean, it incredibly powerful here. What'll be even crazier is if you'll have the ability to map, say, tags in an MQTT broker into that asset hierarchy at some point. That would be even crazier. But to Trent's point on MCP, I want to, MCP is becoming a standard functionality. He's absolutely correct. Inductive automation, Tatsoff, Siemens. We just got done meeting with WinCCOA folks the last 3 days. Yeah, everybody is providing MCP support, but it's really how are they implementing it? But at a minimum, right now, it's going to change the way we work with tools like Portainer. No question. That looks sick, Neil, by the way. And that's at SPS in November, right? In Nuremberg?
Correct. So
okay.
Correct. So we that version that you've got there, we actually had some feedback on that version. So there's going to be some even more enhancements coming out of that one. So the first GA of that will be available at or after the Nuremberg SPS.
So let me ask you this question before we call it a day. But it seems to me that like the market, like you guys, obviously you were way ahead of the market, and we talked about this before, that you developed technology that only a fraction of the market was really ready for when you developed it, which is a huge strategic advantage, and B, it's a problem because you still have to have runway to run your business before people start buying it, right? Mm-hmm. So what's your growth look like? I mean, I would think over the last year, 12 to 18 months, your growth is got to be exponential, right? I mean, it had in terms of the growth is
that
right.
really is,
and
I'm expecting to follow through on the old triple double, which is like the VC dream. I'll be shocked if we don't do that, just because the market has turned a corner in regards to wholesale adoption of this technology now. So whereas before we were kind of pegged to market adoption, we kind of still are, but market adoption has done this now as well. So I'm expecting,
to your point, when I was doing my like impromptu prove it session with the FreeWave ES1000 running Portainer and deploying that stack, I always ask questions. Who here is using containers in their, and everybody in the room was familiar with Portainer, and everyone was using containers to deploy applications. And if I had asked the same question a year ago, it would have been a third new Portainer and 25% were using containers. Like that's how crazy the adoption's been in the last year. So I was thinking, man, Neil and Portainer must be fucking killing the market now, because it literally all at once, everyone is, looking for the solution to the same problem, which is how do I manage all this? And no matter what you look at, Portainer is the answer. I mean, it's what you ultimately go, Portainer's how I'm going to manage this. So anyway,
we're trying to still keep the technology at a cost level that's incredibly within reach for every organization, right? We're not trying to come out here and milk maximum profit out and revenue out of the product. We want this product to be able to be used everywhere and anywhere. So from a cost perspective, we're still aiming to be at least a third of the price of any of our nearest competitors. So that the thing is designed to be
incredibly. Do you care to share again with everyone? So Business Edition, when you go from, if you go with the open source, you get three hosts that you can manage, right? And then obviously when you want to take the next step beyond 3 hosts, what is a license for Business Edition cost?
So we try to keep the licensing in line with the hardware capabilities. So it depends if you've got small, medium, or large hardware. And so, it's in the hundreds of dollars a device per year, like under $100 device per year for most of the devices, plus there's a fee for the server. But it depends on the type of hardware, whether you've got, really grunty industrial PCs or less weight or very, very small ones. or even service. Some people have service.
So the number that everybody cares about is the per, basically less than $100 per year per device.
Correct. And in some cases, much less if they're very small devices.
Yeah, go ahead. The last question: any use case for automotive? Yeah, any use case for automotive or intralogistics? Well, I mean, yes, there's definitely a use case for automotive, because if you look at all the biggest implementations, they're all in the automotive industry. But do you want to go ahead and answer that? Yeah.
Yeah, well, so one of our largest customers is in fact Cummins, and as I said, there will be a podcast coming out from IoT use case. So we recorded it with them in Cummins, and that is 100% automotive IoT.
And then you have others that you're not allowed to share, but I do know some of the, some of the largest auto manufacturers in the world are using Portainer to manage all their devices on the plant floor. Let's just put it.
Unfortunately, we are under NDA with about 90% of our customers, which is so incredibly frustrating. But I take that seriously.
All right, with that, cool. Neil, I appreciate it. For those of you guys, if anybody wants to learn more, it's portainer.io. Okay, you can obviously try Portainer by just going to your agent and saying, give me an instruction to install Docker on Linux and install Portainer. You could get started that easy. Okay, I would encourage you to go to Portainer's new website, portainer.io. It's all been rebranded. It's all there's a lot of really, really valuable information there. And my recommendation is to go ahead and just watch some of their videos on some of the most simple use cases for unlocking the potential in the platform. They've been answered in video already, and I want to encourage you to do that. So go to portainer.io. Neil, any parting remarks before we call it a day?
No, I am in the Industry 4 Discord, so you'll see me in there as Portainer.io. So I'm also in there, and feel free to message me in there or tag me into any conversations, and I will respond.
Awesome. Neil, appreciate you very much. Thank you guys for watching. Like, subscribe, comment down below if you're watching after we did the recording, and we'll see you in the